All right, second graders, here we go. We are doing DIY number 1, which is the brain pop on rural, suburban, and urban. So what I want you to do first is go ahead and either go to one of the computers out in the hallway or grab an iPad, go to Brain Pop, log in, and you are going to search for rural, suburban, and urban. And the spelling is right here, so you can go ahead and find that on BrainPop. I want you to go ahead and listen to it, and then we'll come back together and we'll answer the questions that go with it. So I want you to pause the video and go listen to the BrainPop, and then come right back to this spot. Okay, so now you've listened to the Brain Pop. What we're going to do together is we are going to talk about the questions from the Brain Pop, and then we are going to go and talk about the research questions that go with this Brain Pop that will help you. So the first one, number 1. Now these are just for you to take notes on. So as we're talking, you can go ahead and take some notes if you want to, or you may want to add to maybe the notes you took while you watch the Brain Pop. So number 1, what kind of places do people live? Well, people live kind of everywhere. They live in houses, apartments. They live in the big city, in tall skyscrapers. They live in cities like McKinney, where they have a neighbor right directly next to them. And then they live in other areas where there's a lot of farm and the houses are not really close to each other. So they kind of live all over, okay? This number 2, what is an urban area? Now if you remember in the Brain Pop, an urban area is, think of downtown Dallas. So when we go to our field trip in May, we are going to go to the Perot Museum. The Perot Museum is downtown Dallas, and that is an urban area. So think of big, tall skyscrapers. There's not houses down there. People live in apartments in big, big, tall buildings. All the buildings kind of go up to the sky. Lots of buildings in there, and they go really tall. So an urban area, think of downtown Dallas, okay? What are suburban areas like? Well, McKinney is kind of like a suburban where a lot of families live. It's predominantly made up of houses. The houses, you live in little communities just like we do around Walker. So Walker and McKinney, around Walker where you live, and McKinney is like a suburban area. Number 4, what is a population? And a population is where they take count of how many people live in a certain area. Or we could say the population of your classroom. How many people is that? The population of Walker. How many students go to Walker? Or the population of McKinney. How many people live in McKinney? So the population is how many people live in a certain area, or they are in a certain area. And the last one, number 5, what is a rural area like? I grew up in a very rural area. I had to drive an hour to go to the grocery store. I lived on 20 acres out in Farmersville. We had horses and chickens and our own vegetable garden. We had a pond that we would go fishing. I had 4-wheelers, so I lived in a very rural area. It's not like where I live today, not at all. So rural area is kind of like farmland. The houses are not on top of each other, not side by side, like it is maybe where you live. So what I want you to do now that we've kind of talked through these questions, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our research questions, and we're only going to look at the questions that match this DIY. So you can see up here it says 7D and 8A. So we're going to go to our research questions, and we're going to look and see which ones match. So 7D, there's 3 of them, number 2, number 3, and number 4. So basically, the state of Texas says that you, as a second grader, have to tell us the difference between rural, urban, and suburban areas, okay? So what your teacher is going to be looking from you is, can you tell us the difference between those 3? Okay, so number 2 says, what is a rural community? Remember, it's where I grew up, 20 acres on a farm. Okay, now don't write where Miss Warrington grew up. Okay, so you're going to write something like farmland. Okay, houses spread apart. Okay, if you need to pause the video so you can take notes, please do that now, okay? Number 3 says, what is an urban community? And remember, urban, I want you to think downtown Dallas. Tall buildings, lots and lots and lots and lots of people, really tight, walking, and they live really close together. So downtown Dallas, okay? Again, if you need to pause so you can take notes, do that now, because these research questions need to be done, okay? And number 4, what is a suburban community? And McKinney is a suburban community. We have lots of houses. They are next to each other, but like an urban, but they're a little further spread apart. And, you know, there is still some farmland in McKinney. I can tell you on the way that I go home to my house, there's lots of farm area before I get to my house. But then I live in a little neighborhood where there's lots of houses together. So, McKinney is a suburban community. And one funny thing that I think about is there's a car called a Suburban, and it's usually families that have a lot of kids to fit all the kids in and go to the soccer games and go to this and go to that, the grocery store. And so I think a suburban car fits with a family who lives in a suburban area. I don't know, just something silly. Okay, so you've answered those 3 research questions that go with DIY number 1. Okay, so make sure that you have answered these 3 questions at the end of this video, okay? If you need to rewind, go ahead and rewind it. If you need to watch the brain pop again, watch the brain pop again, okay? Good luck.